Motherhood, but not quite as we imagine. Thought-provoking, refreshing, straightforward, sometimes taboo, often seemingly ordinary, but always honest. Welcome to School for Mothers, opening conversations we all need to have, exploring ways in which you can be fulfilled as a woman, once a mother. Now here is your host, mother of 10, Danusia Melina Durban.
Hello and welcome back to the School for Mothers podcast. I'm Danusia Melina Durban, and in this week's episode, Refusal, I'm talking with storyteller and art director Rachel Pesso in what's sure to be a heartfelt and truthful conversation about her refusal to become a mother. We still live in a world in which it's assumed that women want to be, or ought to be, mothers, or do we? I don't know. I mean, having kids was honestly once considered a necessity for every woman. But the last few years it's really shifted, and I think a lot of women are beginning to consider whether they want to do that, which of course is very much their own prerogative, isn't it? I mean, I hear people say that maybe women don't want to settle down, and I don't think that's what it is at all. Here we're going to listen to the conversation that I'm going to have with Rachel, because she's dead set on the fact that she really, really doesn't want a child or children. On the other hand, I do have a hunch that if you value social norms, you'll probably have kids, because even as childlessness or child-free living becomes more common, it still isn't socially accepted. At least I don't think so from when I've had conversations with my friends that don't have children, and, you know, when I read things about what it's like. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation with Rachel, because there's so many dominant views about what we as women should be doing. So let's see when Rachel and I get together. But before we get there, this episode is sponsored by Me Sheets, and they're my simple but incredibly effective system to get mothers not only doing the things they want to and need to, but as important, if not more, Me Sheets reinstall mothers bang smack in the centre of their own lives. That is crucial. And I know that it's so easy to forget ourselves, and by the end of the day or the week or the month or the year, to realise that we haven't figured. Like, we're coming to the end of 2018. And when you look back at the beginning of 2018, when you had almost certainly thought through what you'd like for this year, did you get to you? Did you actually get to the things that you wanted? If you didn't, you might really want to go and download Me Sheets for yourself, because 2019 is coming up and you need to be bang smack in the middle. That's what Me Sheets do. So if you want your own set of Me Sheets, which is a very simple digital download, it's a sheet that you print off. You can go and get your hands on them by going to schoolformothers.com/Me Sheets. That's schoolformothers.com/Me Sheets. Okay, let's dive into today's episode with Rachel Pesso. So today's guest is Rachel Pesso, an amazing friend actually of mine. Rachel and I have worked on some branding for Unstoppable Mothers before it became School for Mothers. And so actually Rachel and I have done an awful lot of messy, fabulous work together that contributed to the very existence of School for Mothers. So hello, Rachel.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here, and seeing this all come to life has been just such an amazing thing.
Yeah. I mean, what a journey we've been on.
Yeah, exactly. It's been beautiful. And I'm so excited to be a contributor now and really dive into some amazing content.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really grateful that you agreed to be on this podcast episode, because this is a bit of a departure for us, isn't it? As you know, listeners will know that every episode is with a mother. And this episode is called Refusal. It'll give you a bit of a hint of the content here. And I know you and I have talked before about the kind of cultural pressure of being a mother. And that's exactly what I thought it would be fantastic for us to talk about in terms of, so tell us a bit about where you stand about being a mother.
Yes. Actually, when you had originally asked me, my gut inside said, hell no, I'm not coming on here to talk about that. Like, nobody will be supportive or want to hear about it, because it feels like, the majority of people in this world are generally, want to be mothers, or that's more about what you hear about. So I felt at first total resistance to wanting to share why I don't want to have children.
Can I just stop you a minute, Rachel? What were the feelings going on for you in that resistance? What was going on there?
There's a lot of fear. And actually, that's one of the main things that I think is great to talk about, because a lot of the times when it comes to the subject of being a mother, you often can be really judged very quickly when you say that you don't want to have children. And bringing it back to my own experience, when I first started discovering that I didn't want to have children, I had to have multiple conversations with my most loved friends and family. And their responses were actually what really made me feel judged. I mean, I had to tell my own mother probably about, I would say, 20 conversations before she actually started to believe me. Like, maybe she doesn't really want children.
Oh, that's outrageous, though.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that when you say something that people don't want to accept it. I think that's part of it. And it's same with even my best friends. And, again, I haven't probably spoken to them about this specifically, but I think that, I had originally told them, I don't think I want children. And their responses were, oh, you'll change your mind. Or a lot of people say that. And then in a few years from now, you'll just start wanting to have a baby. And there's no reason for it, and people will say things like that. And it's like, it got to the point where every time I'd say it, they'd kind of like throw in those statements. And it felt awful, because here I am sharing something that's actually hard to say and hard to explain to people. And my most loved, the people that know me best, were telling me, no, you don't feel that, or that can't be true, or that's not right. So I felt really judged, to the point where I started thinking, should I just not tell people that? Like, I don't have to share it. I could just say, like, when people ask me if me and my, now husband are thinking of having children, I could just say, we're still thinking about it. Or, I could say all those like easy statements, but because of who I am, it's really hard for me to kind of just play that role, because my truth isn't that. So I think that for me, I had to have some hard conversations with my family and even my friends, and just say, listen, like, I really feel strongly about this. And I hope that you can know that I'm serious about it. It's not just like I'm just saying it and just to say it. And I think that many people probably go through this, even when they're maybe not sure, or there's kind of a shame around not wanting to have children. And like, I think for me, it's like, there's even a fear that lives in there for myself. It's like, God, well, what kind of person am I being labeled as if I'm not wanting to be a mother?
Yeah. What kind of person do you think you are then? I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's just put on the table really quickly, shall we? We could dance around this, but there's this big fat word, and it's selfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I had told my mom in a few of the conversations we've had, one of the things that she told me that her father told her, when I guess she didn't actually say that maybe she had felt the same way as I did, because I don't think she wants to 1,000% admit that part. But she told me that her father said, the only people that don't have children are selfish. And they're selfish not just as human beings, but from an overall, because people were put on this earth to recreate. There's that whole kind of historic meaning behind why a human was created, right? So
yes,
I think that when my mom said that to me, I was like, wow, like how awful. Like I thought to myself, like I could cry. I mean, and I actually, after we were on the beach and I took a walk with Pat, my husband, and I said to him, I can totally understand how people would perceive that, from a first look. But I also thought, well, how selfish would it be for me to have children if it wasn't a hell yes for me?
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone is allowed to use that statement with everything else, like, oh, if you don't want to do something, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Right. So it doesn't apply in this scenario because I love children. I think truthfully, I would be a wonderful mother, but it's more importantly that in my gut, in my insides, it's not a role I want to take on. And I think knowing that and taking it on anyway, just to please, I don't know whom, would be crazy. I mean, and I think anyone that would want to convince me into motherhood is kind of, I don't like to use the word crazy, actually. I think it, for me, it doesn't sit well to when somebody tries to convince me that it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah. I'm guessing there's been quite a few people trying to convince you.
Yeah. And I still don't fully understand that aspect of it. A lot of it, I think, is maybe for their own, like to feel comfortable themselves because that's their decision. And again, just because I have a different decision doesn't mean their decision is wrong or right. I mean, neither is wrong or right, in my opinion. I also, another reason for me not wanting children is I have anxiety. And I think that it's been something that I navigated in this decision. It's just that I know that I'm able to support and care for another human, but like at what level and, how much can I handle? And, there's so much fear in a lot of this decision in itself. Just, what will you face as a mother? What do you have to sacrifice? Do you have to sacrifice? And I know that's something you speak to a lot of.
What do you think? Because you're talking about the sacrifices needed, and it sounds like you have a model that you're kind of mapping yourself onto, that you're wondering if you could fit into. What is it that you think it takes to be a mother?
Yeah, I think that time in general is a big one for me. I've noticed even in my own mom's experience with motherhood, it's like when you have a child, they're your child forever and you have to commit that amount of time for life. And something about that thought for me feels like, I don't know if I can decide on that right now or ever. So for me, when it comes to sacrifice, it can be associated with time and then also a little bit of freedom. And again, like I know that there are many mothers who are capable of living the exact life that I would want to live and still be a mother. And I intuitively know that if I really wanted, to have a business and travel and, have an amazing relationship with my husband, and I could accomplish all of those things while being a mother. But I also know that there is a difficulty in kind of creating that life. And I'm not sure that I want to, like for me personally, that I want to put in that extra effort that would take for me. Because I know even some of my closest friends struggle so much with time to themselves and spending time to explore and create the life that they want outside of their children.
Isn't that because, I'm guessing here because I don't know your friends, but isn't that because they themselves have a model of what their children need? It's like there seems to be this kind of operating model of what children need in order to grow up and be functional these days. And a lot of that has shifted into inordinate amounts of time and extracurricular stuff. And like mothers constantly on give, output, like it's all coming through them as a channel out towards others with very, very little coming back in. And I don't know who would sign up for that, a kind of model of motherhood. quite honestly, I wouldn't, and I haven't. So I'm wondering, because it really does sound like there is this abiding version of motherhood that is pretty unpalatable to you.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that. I think that, so my model, again, my mother she would never regret her decision to be a mother. And she obviously loves her children, and there's, all of the things. But I think that maybe she wasn't able to fully create her life and her dreams outside of her children. I didn't have that as a vision growing up. And even now, I mean, I know that now she's retired and we're all kind of not suffocating her as much as we used to with all of our problems. So she has the space to really, she's the happiest she's ever been. And I think seeing, again, having that as the example for me, it definitely plays a giant role. And then again, my experience of that model has been that, even through my other friends' families and their moms. And because I used to spend a lot of time at other people's houses, in the holidays. And I loved family so much. It's such a big thing to me. I love celebrating and having people to celebrate. So again, the decision to not be a mother, it has there's a lot of things that feel wow, well, what will my life be if I don't have children? So I think again, I'm still discovering all of that myself, on an exploration of how and what to build my life around if it's not around children, because I think that, again, the model is build your life around your children. That's the model that
Yes, exactly.
That's really I think most people's interpretation of mothers. And again, because I'm an entrepreneur and because I've worked with so many mothers who have their own businesses, and I've seen the other side 1,000%. It's that intuitively inside, I don't know, if I would be able to accomplish that.
Well, Rachel, what you're saying is you don't want to give up on yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, you aren't seeing an appealing choice. You're seeing women who, once they're mothers, appear to have to give up on their, not wholly give up on, but rather majority give up on, I'd say, or in different proportions, give up on themselves, their dreams, their desires, their ability to be free, their, to move, to travel, to have deep relationship, all those kinds of things that you've mentioned. That's what you're seeing. And so it's that is not appealing. You mentioned your mum, and there's this concept of what I like to call undeveloped selves. And so our children can feel the tension and they bear the grief of their mother's disappointment and frustration at her undeveloped self. So the parts of mothers that don't get developed, that don't get attention, that don't get air, that they can't fly, they can't kind of escape that, as you just said, suffocation of the numerous multitude of requests, demands, needs. Yeah. So, but the children actually bear that. They understand it. They feel it. So you, to me, are expressing that whole area. And there's a psychoanalyst called Jessica Benjamin, and she says, a mother who stifles her own longings, ambitions, and frustrations cannot tune empathically to her child's joys and failures. And I mean, that's quite an extreme end of things. But I guess when we stunt our own longings and our ambitions, it's really, really, really difficult for us to enjoy thoroughly and fully our children's freedom. Because that's, after all, as mothers, really our job is to obviously safeguard them, love them, set them up in terms of their independent skills, and see them go off into the world as functional young people. Mm. And much of that is to equip them with the context and, the environment and the skills to actually go fly out into the world and be the biggest person they can be. How about if you're not feeling like the biggest person you could be as a woman. I feel like there's the undercurrent of this in pretty well everything you're saying, you know?
Yeah, I think that's super true. And I think like even in general, there is just so much pressure associated with the decision. I think not only the decision, but also the pressure that we feel to have children for our parents. The pressure that we feel to have children to make other people feel more comfortable with our decision. And I've even had this to me, it's a tough one that I have to deal with a lot. So Pat is wonderful with children. I think he gets so much joy in just interacting with them. And I've had so many people say to me like, oh my God, he'd be such an amazing dad. Look at him.
How could you, Rachel? I mean, how could you?
Yeah.
Two things. How could you possibly let him down and not have him flourish as a father? And in fact, on top of that, what kind of woman are you? I mean, are you a real woman?
Correct.
Are you a real woman?
It's so difficult to kind of in that moment. And I believe in my heart. And, again, this is up to him. If he says he doesn't want children, I'm going to believe him. If he's doing it for me, that's also on him. I can only know what I know in my heart. And he's told me multiple times that it wasn't a hell yes for him. So, he's not going to push for something that he's also unsure about himself, which also he's judged for. And I think like in that scenario specifically, it makes me feel so awful I could cry because like you said, what type of person I am to take that away from him. That's what it feels like. And I'm like, wow, but I'm not doing that, right? I'm not. Well, and it's also my duty as a woman to kind of create this. So it's a lot to navigate. And I think that we have been discovering as a couple what our life looks like without children. And, I've also had people say this to me more than on one account, like, who will take care of you when you're old?
Oh, yes, that's an old chestnut, that one, isn't it? It's a great one.
I'm going to have children so that way I have someone to take care of me when I'm old. Really? Like that's the comments here. So
I'll send a couple of mine over to look after you.
Exactly. And honestly, like my best friends who are going to have children, I love them. They send me videos on how much they love me. And those are some of my most favorite text messages to receive. And we are lucky because we're going to be able to choose, which family we want to spend holidays with. And, we can spoil their kids. We can do all these things that maybe will fulfill another part that we can't, fully fulfill without having children. I know there's so much love to be felt from having a child and what that provides for you. And I get it. I think that, again, it has to be something that you really want. And I really think like at the end of the day, when people are deciding this, because even the woman that was doing my nails was talking to me about this. She was saying, oh, you have kids, and she's asking me, do you have kids? I'm thinking about it, but I'm not sure. And she was saying how she likes sleep. This is what she was saying. I like to sleep. I like to just, sleep in and do whatever. And I know when you have kids, you can't do that. So it's all of these perceived things that just everybody lives by this, like you mentioned, a model, whether it's their own or that other people have kind of embedded in them from experience. But I personally would love to hear about people who decided not to have children and how their life is looking back on it. Because I'm 34 and I think that, how will I feel when I'm, in 20 years from now? I'm not sure, but I'm not willing to just decide something based on that. So that's kind of where I stand with this because I'm just like,
yeah, it would be a really interesting kind of piece of research for you, wouldn't it? To go out and talk to women between the age of 50 something and 70.
Yeah.
And find 10 women that you could speak with and on this subject to see, well, what did they actually feel? as they became menopausal and the possibility to have children. Although, of course, with technology, actually, even that has changed. But nevertheless, it's like, was it right for them? I mean, essentially, I'm hearing you say, will I have regrets? Did they have regrets? Are they wishing, yeah, absolutely. I really wish now I'm 70 that I had a daughter or a son that was there, that I was in relationship with. Now, across the road from where I live, there's a great big double-fronted, beautiful home. And there is one lady in it, wonderful woman called Phoebe, who will never listen to this podcast. Mm-hmm. I would imagine. I'd be very surprised if she does. And she lives across the road, and we look out for her because we know she's in that huge house. It's maybe 6 bedrooms, and it's just her. And she probably lives in 3 rooms because it really is huge. And nobody comes to visit. She has 4 children. We could count. In fact, we were talking this morning about it. We could count on our hand the amount of visits she's ever had. Not that we're behind the curtains constantly twitching them, you understand. Yeah. But it's really difficult for us not to actually see the comings and goings. And maybe she goes and visits her 4 children regularly, and we have no idea about that. And we could be making up the whole load of rubbish. Yeah. But in our story, there's this woman who, for 40, they're in their 40s, her children, at least. And it's like, wow. I just look at her and I think, wow. I actually said this morning, I wonder what drives her. I wonder what's her. And it's not, I don't mean that children ought to be. They're adults. They've flown. They've gone. But this whole idea that our children will look after us when we're older, that they'll be there, they'll be constant companions and looking out for us. I'm not sure that's the case in many cultures anymore. And of course, it's not a homogenous culture. There are different cultures that are incredibly supportive and live in very different, multiple ways. But certainly in the UK, in Anglo-Saxon lifestyles, we tend to be at distance from each other now. We move around the world. And I have all these children, and I say to them, well, I hope one of you is going to be about. I mean, I really do. I hope so.
And I think that's the other part of this. So I think there's a lot of fear associated with having children and just your experiences. So, I have a lot of friends who have siblings that have, drug and alcohol problems, and, there's a lot of different things. And based on things that you've experienced in your life, it actually might change your mind on wow, do you know how much goes into it when you don't have the perfect family, perfect child, perfect, the concept of motherhood in that sense. And I think a lot of the times, so we don't have children. No one has a child being like, okay, I'm going to pray for a perfect child, right? We're going to love, obviously, any child that we create. But I think that there's so much hardships that go into motherhood, and my mom, she's struggled a lot in her relationship with my older sister. There's been a lot of struggles, even in terms of time not even speaking to each other for years. There's things like that often show up as well that I think impact not only my personal experience, but I think others. You see things that scare you, that you say God, I don't know if I want to experience that, or I don't know if I want to take the chance to potentially even maybe experience that. So I think a lot of my own decisions around this are fear, just fear of what could happen, fear what might happen. And I'm okay with saying that because I think that it's normal. And so many people feel that. And some people, I've had others who I know who've had children and they felt the same way I did. And they said all the feelings that they felt before totally disappeared. They couldn't even believe that they felt those things, And that's amazing to me. It still doesn't mean that I'm willing or I really want to try it.
No, I hear that.
You can't really take it back. So it's one of those decisions where it's you do it and it's a end all be all. It's not like you can say, tried it, didn't work out. Let me head on back, right?
It's not like your dog, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And even when Pat and I got we call him our child, our dog.
Yeah.
At first, we experienced many things that felt like, wow, did we make the wrong decision? Because we didn't realize how much of our life had to shift in order just to have the dog. And I mean, it's so simple, and it sounds, again, I'm not comparing, owning a dog to having a child, but I know people do not really like that comparison, but just from testing it out scenario, it felt like, holy crap, if I can't even handle this, like, can I handle a human? If I had even one thought, like, should I give this dog back? This is way too much work. Should I try it with a child? No, I don't think so. Like for me personally, that was another big sign. I was like, wow, I need to like think about this for real, not just jump into something. And again, like obviously now I'm totally obsessed and in love with my dog. He's my life on so many different levels. He follows me around the house all day, but it's very different, obviously.
Yeah, it is. I've got a question about your growth. How exactly do you risk growing?
Yeah, I think that I've been on a journey in my own self and with my business and for a bunch of years now. So I feel like I've been growing since I discovered my voice and my truth. And I've battled a lot of, I call it going outside of the general models that exist in this world, like starting my own business. I dealt with the same type of things. Like, so what's your real job? Okay. Like I've only been doing this for, however many years now, but it's still, breaking out of the models are very difficult. So I've grown a lot. I think like when it comes to growth, it's a constant. I'm always growing. I'm growing as we speak out of different phases of emotionally and whatnot. I mean, Pat and I just got married a month ago now, almost a month ago. And the amount of growth just from that. And we've been together for 6 years. And I said, like, what's going to change, And so much just keeps changing and shifting. And I love it. I mean, I think it's just the most exciting part of life is to keep growing and changing. So I think that I might put some limitations on myself in certain areas where I know that I could grow, like bringing it back to just even being a mother. I could, like, as I continue to grow, maybe I would be able to kind of not feel more comfortable with deciding to be a mother or not, or wanting it, or, just growing into a space where I believe that I could have everything that I dream for and be a mother myself. I'm not sure, I'm not sure where that one leads, but yeah, from a growth standpoint, I think that I'm constantly pushing into the uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's really funny. Part of me feels I'm waiting for the word to come up because I'm going to use this word, but it's not in a judgmental way. It's because I feel like it's sad that your decision not to have children is based on a fear of not being able to be the vibrant, big woman that you can be once you've had a child. Like everything that the whole person that you want to be, and that you can't see a version of that out there that you might be able to create for yourself. I'm not sad that you're choosing not to have children. So this is quite a difference for me.
Yeah.
Am I making that clear? Because
100%.
Yeah, because I have a load of kids, as you know. I'm the exact opposite. And so I'm not pro kids. Because I have a tribe of kids doesn't mean to say I think every woman, true purpose is to have children and to go through all the roller coaster ride that having children is about. I really don't believe that. And I'm certainly 1,000,000% and more behind any woman's choice to, have it her way, to design it her way, not the way that society says we ought to have it. So, and I'm still sad that it's based on the current prevailing kind of embedded, vicious perfection model of what it takes to be a mother. And that's the bit. It's like, oh, no, the School for Mothers is so much about like upending, busting, like smashing that apart to say, women, we have to do this on our own terms, and external factors out there, such as childcare, kind of the narratives about what is possible, all of that needs to change. So it can't just be internal. It is the combination of internal and external conditions. And,
Yeah.
I was telling a friend earlier today, I was telling her that, I'm really looking forward to speaking with Rachel Pesso. She's this amazing woman that I've worked with before in business and blah, blah, blah. And I said, one of the things that really strikes me, she'd be an amazing mother. And of course, you've said it as soon as, like, within the first couple of minutes of speaking, you're like, yeah, I would, because you would. I mean, yes. And we make up so much about, I'm not saying I make it up, but there is so much made up about women who choose not to give that love. You get to choose where you direct your love, where you direct that.
Yeah. And I think that there's so much beauty in what you just said. And I think also it's like, I sometimes go back to this like concept of just because you're good at something or would be good at something doesn't mean you should do it. And I think that there's a lot of power in that statement, because
yes,
I think even though my mother was wonderful, like I think she may have had a bigger purpose. And I think, like, for me, as I have this conversation, as I dive more into it, the fears come up. A lot of the fears are there because of the outer world. And when I really tune in, I really sit in silence and I call it meditate on this, and I think about what I want to do in the world, I think it doesn't include that. It doesn't include being a mother. And I think, like, knowing that, it helps guide me on the right path for me. And I think that, again, like, I want to serve and impact so many people in my business and just in general in life. And I think that I have a lot to give, and that part isn't sad, right? So I think that I totally hear you on wanting to change. I think in general, changing the model of motherhood, not just for people like me, but just for everyone, because there is so much that's possible. I know a woman who runs a business and she lives in Costa Rica, and she travels, and her children are with her all the time. Like, I mean, and not in a bad way, like, and nothing holds her back. And it's so inspiring to see. I think so many people will benefit from seeing more of that, seeing more of how a woman is living her truth and her dreams and really truly wants to be a mother.
Yeah. This is such a wonderful, juicy, really honest conversation. I'm so grateful that you were brave enough and committed enough to yourself to share how you feel about this. I have no doubt there's going to be lots of women, mothers and not, who, and by the way, we have quite a few men listening to this podcast, which is makes me very happy. And I have no doubt that there'll be so much resonance for people, Rachel. I know it. I mean, as if I haven't questioned whether really, was this a good idea to have children? Am I the material to be a mother? Certainly a few years ago, 5 years ago, when I had the triplets, was like, oh dear, whatever was I thinking? So, and it's not like you suddenly decide it and then you've made the decision. Certainly if you have more children, you revisit that decision, and on good days or more challenging days. So I'm super grateful to you for this. I think you're just serving so many people, and more than anything, serving yourself, which is perfect. More women that serve their own needs, the better. It's not either us or. So
thank you so much. Yeah, it was, even coming on here, it's scary to really say these very scary truths, or just feeling all of this. And to be honest, this is the first time I've had a really truthful, honest conversation about this without people giving judgments and their kind of opinions on where they think I should be or do and whatnot. So it really was beautiful to kind of just be able to have a conversation and just have you here questioning in a loving way, really wanting to understand it. It really means a lot.
Oh, thank you so much. Wasn't that a truly special conversation? I found it staggering to hear just how many times Rachel has had to go over her decision in order to be taken seriously. I mean, I think she said, wasn't it 20 times at least with her mum? To be honest, it doesn't sound like she's there yet. I'm sending her bucket loads of strength and love as she continues to plug away at refusing to succumb to something she really doesn't want. Becoming a mother, well, I don't know. It's not all it's cracked up to be. I think many mothers, we get absorbed into and kind of swept along with this amazing story of what it might be. Many of us. And the reality of it, well, the mind-numbingly mundane aspect of it, day in, day out, can be pretty exhausting and dull. It's okay, listeners. I also know about the blissful moments. Of course I do. But I want to keep it real here. It's pretty shit a lot of the time. It really is. And as for children being grateful or kind of feeding into the mother's life, especially when she's older, I think, Rachel raised that. Like, who is going to care for her when she's older? Well, I hate to mention it, but our children they go away. Even those little cherubs that we, those little gorgeous little people that we have right now. No, listeners, they will go. They will go off and lead their own lives. And if you're lucky, they'll stay in touch. And some don't. So it's kind of a fallacy. It's a myth that our children stay around and look after. Certainly not in the UK culture. Of course, different cultures have very different norms. Certainly in the Anglo-Saxon culture, I'm afraid that kind of cohesive, multi-generational living where everyone cares for each other, it's missing. I don't want to leave you on a depressive note, but I do have to tell, it like it is, certainly from my perspective. I absolutely loved this conversation with Rachel, and I believe it took mighty guts for her to come out and show up and voice everything she did. I really do. You know it does. If you've gleaned any nuggets of inspiration or would love to be part of a community of powerhouse mothers, we're not all rocking big corporate careers. That's not the criteria. It's mothers who have wishes for themselves. It's not all about the kids. So if you would like to be in a community like that, then come look up School for Mothers Facebook community. You can find us on Facebook by searching for School for Mothers Group. That's School for Mothers Group. We'd love you to come and join us. Also, message me at podcast@schoolformothers.com with any feedback about this episode, or in fact, if you've got suggestions of people that you'd love me to be in conversation with, or any questions you have. I really love getting your questions and your feedback. Of course, I won't lie, I love your ratings and your reviews. I'm not even sure if we've got any reviews. Come on, listener. Come on, there must be one of you that can come and review us. Don't make me beg. I cannot wait to be here next week with special guest Misa Mink of Driven Woman Network. Her episode's called Drive, and all I can say is things get all revved up and ready to go. Hope you'll come listen. Talk to you soon. Same time, same place. Have a great week. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to the School for Mothers podcast. To continue the conversation and keep your dose of inspiration up, head over to schoolformothers.com/podcast, where you'll find bonus content from Danusia and her guests on habits, recommendations, books, best apps, time-saving secrets, life hacks, health, sleep, and anything in between. That's schoolformothers.com/podcast.